People are still dropping in. Okay, I think we're going to get started. Welcome to this seminar arranged by us. My name is Erik Turner, and I am a communications officer at IAM, working with communication and advocacy and fundraising and all stuff related. This seminar will be held in English, but if you prefer to ask questions in Swedish, that is okay. Use the chat for that. Questions and comments, and we will try to pick these up. Following this seminar, you're welcome to join us in our exhibition area to get to know us more and ask more questions and deepen the discussions and comment further. A bit short, I will tell you about IAM if you don't know us. IAM is short for individuell människohjälp, strange Swedish word, not translatable into English. In English, we call ourselves the IAM, the Swedish Development Partner. And it is, as the name suggests, we are a Swedish-based organization working with development cooperation around the world. We fight poverty and exclusion in 15 countries today. We were founded in 1938 as a reaction to the violence and aggression and repression we saw spreading across Europe back then. And today we work all around the world, from Sweden in our home turf to Eastern Europe, to Middle East, to Southern Africa and Central America and South Asia. And one of our most exciting initiatives is Humanium Metal, and that is what we are here to discuss today. And to tell us more about that, we have Jacqueline Duer with us. Please, Jacqueline, take the word.
Yeah, thank you so much, Erik, and welcome to all of you. Hello from my side. My name is Jacqueline, and I work with IAM on the nexus, the connection between peace and development, with the flagship project we have, Humanium Metal, and you will learn much more about Humanium Metal in the following half an hour.
Great, Jacqueline. I have some questions to get you started. First out, IAM is striving for equal rights for all. What does guns have to do with that?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question. It's a question we receive regularly, actually. People are asking, so you're working on strong democracies, you're working on civic space, you're working on economic inclusion. Why do you even care about guns, right? And when we talk about equal rights for all, that's of course something we're discussing here under the whole conference, human rights. Then we know that legally speaking, everybody has equal rights, right? But we also know that not everybody has the same access to their rights. Not everybody has the same possibility to exercise their rights. And well, while we're discussing plenty of the barriers during this conference, today we want to focus actually on gun violence. That is one of the barriers to people exercising their rights. And I'm going to explain it a bit further. I want to highlight three of the issues we're dealing with mainly. And the first one is homicides, because gun violence threatens the right to life. Every year we have 250,000 people dying violently, killed by a gun. 250,000 people are killed every year by gun violence. And I think it's very important to mention that the majority of these killings happen actually in non-conflict settings. So it's not only in war zones, in conflict zones, it's not only out there, it actually happens everywhere. It happens in settings such as in El Salvador, where I was working since the civil war there. It happens in settings such as the US. You maybe hear that there's a shooting basically on a daily basis coming from the US. It happens in places such as in Sweden and other European countries. So gun violence threatens the right to life globally. And another aspect I want to highlight is that gun violence also threatens the right to equality. And I want to focus on one aspect here. There's plenty to discuss, but I don't want to tie you out in the beginning. I want to focus on violence against women, because we know that a gun at home increases the likelihood of a domestic violence being fatal. of a woman or child being killed during an episode of domestic violence. And now during the pandemic, we also know that domestic violence is on the rise everywhere, right? At the same time, we see that gun sales to civilians spike in some contexts. So we have more violence at home, we have more guns at home, and we know that this is a really fatal mix. And I want to highlight one other aspect when it comes to violence against women, that is that guns are used to facilitate a wide range of crimes, including sexual violence. And we've recently published a paper on gender-based violence and gun violence, focusing on 4 countries. And I want to cite Amalia, a trans activist from El Salvador, who spoke on a sexual assault she experienced. And she said, if it wasn't for the weapon, I might maybe not could have fought back, but at least I could have tried to run away. At least I could have tried to run away. And I think this really exemplifies how guns are used to facilitate crimes such as sexual violence. And thirdly, I want to highlight the plight of survivors of gun violence. We know that there are at least 2 million people globally that live with firearm-induced injuries, and many of them are disabled for their lifetime. And often they live in contexts where they have little access to any support system. Many, for example, in Central America and El Salvador, hide the fact that they have been shot because they will be automatically being perceived to belong to organized criminal group. Basically, there's a thought that if you have been shot, then you must have done something to deserve it. Daniel, for example, he's one of the right holders I am and our partner Redes Solventes is working with in El Salvador, and I had the chance to meet him 2 years back. He was shot on his payday on his way home, and he is disabled from the waist down since then. At that time, he had a 13-month-old daughter and was left alone with his daughter, and luckily his mother was able to step in and support them both because he couldn't take care of her and himself on his own. And he said that the most difficult part of his disability was being left with no income, basically having this fear of being violated again, the feeling of being inadequate, and having to hide what had happened to you. And I know I said only 3 things, but I want to add one more thing when we talk about human rights. Basically, even when it comes to access to education, healthcare, and political participation, we see that gun violence poses an issue. And I want to take the example of El Salvador again, where we see that organized criminal groups, they exercise territorial control, meaning they basically reign over a neighborhood where there are no police, no military can access. And they would not be able to exercise this territorial control if they hadn't access to firearms, to guns, state-of-the-art rifles. Territorial control means that all people that live there, often being forced to live there because of poverty, they actually are in danger, because if they have to cross from one neighborhood to another, for example, they are always being perceived as belonging to the group by the police force, by the military, and by other gangs. So we hear from students and teachers being assaulted on their way to school because they have to cross a neighborhood. We hear of people not being able to access the justice system. We even hear of people, having problems in their political participation, activists jumping over fence and walls to go to vote. Not everybody will jump over fences and walls and going to vote, meaning they will stay home. So these are just a few examples of how gun violence really poses a barrier to people exercising their rights. And I think I'm going to stop there for now.
Thank you, Jacqueline. It's a rather bleak picture you're painting here. So what is IM actually doing about this?
Exactly, good question. And that's what we're going to focus on today. Because as I said, it is a bleak picture, but we actually can work with it, right? What we needed to do as IM, what we found is we need a new approach, because while we need to work on the root cause of violence, long-term approaches, we also need to do something immediate, and that is to take the gun out of the equation. We need to take the gun out of the equation so that we basically remove the impact the violence has on people's lives now. And this is how Humanium Metal has come to life. And I think we want to start with, we have a very short animation, I think it's less than 2 minutes, and we're going to show it now. And then afterwards, I'm going to explain a bit more what Humanium Metal actually is. So Simon, if you could get the animation started.
Communities across the globe face a growing threat from gun violence. 200,000 people are murdered by gun each year, and there are over 2 million people suffering with lifelong disabilities. A gun is always a threat until it is destroyed. Humanium Metal is the first metal made from destroyed illegal guns that is available for customers across the world, uniting you with governments, companies, and civil society in a common effort to end gun violence. In cooperation with governments, illegal guns are destroyed and transformed into Humanium Metal. Ethical brands create a wide range of products, linking socially responsible customers to those affected by gun violence. Each purchase turns a weapon of violence into a tool for peace, supporting youth to reclaim public spaces as violence-free zones, survivors of gun violence with income generation and psychosocial support, and civil society to advocate for legislation addressing gun violence. Shape the future to end gun violence. Brought to you by Swedish Development Partner.
Right, thank you for that. So I think that is a really good kind of rundown of how it works. So Humanium Metal, in short, is a piece metal that is won out of illegal seized firearms, obsolete firearms, and these weapons, they're fully destroyed. And that's very important because unfortunately, even if illegal weapons are seized, what we see is that because of corruption, because of bad management or storage of the weapons, they end up in the wrong hands again. They are unfortunately trickling into the wrong context again. And so only when they're fully destroyed, they don't pose a danger anymore. We know from South Africa where there was one corrupt police officer that sold arms that were destined for destruction. And with these firearms, 1,600 incidents were documented. Firearms sold by one corrupt police officer. So it's really important that the guns are fully destroyed by government authorities. And IAM really is the facilitator here who brings all the different actors together. So the governments, agencies are destroying the guns and the guns are taken out of the equation. That's good in itself. But we don't stop there. What we then do is that the metal that is won by the destruction is used and sold to vetted companies to produce nice products such as watches and pens and so on. They basically just do the thing. And we have great corporations with, for example, Triva for the watches. We have a cooperation with Malmö University who produces their doctoral wings. We have a cooperation with Right Livelihoods Awards, an alternative Nobel Prize, and the awards are made out of Humanium Metal. So Greta Thunberg has an award made out of Humanium Metal, for example. And we don't stop there neither. The income that is generated by the royalties and sales of these products is then channeled back into the country where the weapons were destroyed. And there they are used to tackle the root causes of violence. And we work with a very broad partner ecosystem here on different levels. I want to highlight some. On the individual level, we are supporting with our partner Red Subventus, for example, in El Salvador, survivors of gun violence. I told you about Daniel earlier, and he's enrolled in a livelihood program now. He learned how to be a blacksmith, that's a trade he can even do in a wheelchair. And he also has access to a peer group support system. And he said this is actually the most important thing. He has met others, he has learned more about his rights as a person with disability, and he has the opportunity to share his plight, share his story. And then we also work on the community level. For example, with violence prevention programs, we set up a violence-free zone with youth in affected centers. And we also work on positive masculinities. We basically want to establish a culture of peace. And on the institutional level, our partners on the ground, they work on legislation, on gun restrictions on the national level and the regional level. And IAM also does this work on a global level. So what we have seen is that, and I would say unfortunately, IAM as an international organization has easier access to some of the global spaces, such as the UN system. So what we try to do is basically make the connection and have our right holders, have our partners being present in these spaces, because we think that these spaces, for example, on disarmament, they should not be only occupied by technocrats, you know, it should be survivors that can share their suggestions. It should be used from the affected communities. And that's how we basically try to bridge these discourses together. And what we see is that Humanium Metal has a really strong symbolism. It attracts new people that are just, you know, on the web looking for a watch and then learn about gun violence. And it kind of also unites people in a sense that from youth that follow us on Instagram to diplomats that see us in the permanent exhibition on disarmament at the UN headquarters, you know, we kind of bridge these spaces together and inspire different actors. And I think time is running, so I'm going to stop there now.
For those that would like to support the cause, support Humanium Metal, how can they get involved?
Yes, I think there are plenty of ways to get involved, because I really think that Humanium Metal, as I said, it speaks to a lot of people and really want to start to utilize, you know, engagement of people. There are obviously, depending on who you are, plenty of ways to get involved. We have commercial actors that are welcome to look into a partnership with us, governments, you know, that with whom we can plan a destruction together, and also individuals. We have plenty of campaign moments, and we just launched the activist platform in 7 languages. So the Humanium Metal activist platform is an online platform in which you can learn more about gun violence. You can learn more about gun violence in relationship to sustainable development goals, for example. You can get inspired to engage in activism and how you can get started. And you can also actually get connected to a lot of network actors in the field. So there's a network space, because we think it's important that this is not only IAM who's doing this, because it's, as we said, it's like a broad partner ecosystem. And you can actually also take concrete action. So you can head over to the platform and just fill in a petition to your government saying, well, really need to work on gun destructions immediately. So for those of you who want to get involved, I'd actually suggest that you follow us on social media. I think my colleagues will be sharing our social media handles here, because there we regularly update on all our campaigns and what is happening. And you also check out the activist platform, of course.
Thank you, Jacqueline. I would like to encourage you all to put your questions into the chat if you have any more questions for Jacqueline or for the rest of us as I am. I don't think we have anything yet, so I'll just continue to ask you, Jacqueline, and we'll wait to see if any one of the listeners want to ask something. Shouldn't Humanium Metal exist in Sweden as well? What is the obstacles and the issues concerning Sweden?
Yes, good question. I think basically Humanium Metal has relevance everywhere where we see gun violence. And And I think it definitely has relevance in Sweden. I think that what we should not forget is that we haven't mentioned how young Humanium Metal is, and that's just a couple of years. So basically what IAM has been doing is starting in El Salvador, where also the idea was inspired from, as I said, one of the countries with the highest homicide rates in the world, so severely affected by gun violence. And then we have just launched Humanium Metal in Zambia at the end of last year. And what we see, of course, and I want to mention this not only in Sweden, but in many countries, is that currently all government resources are focusing on the pandemic. And, you know, this armament in general is something that is already not very high on anybody's priority list. And with the pandemic, it, you know, it sinks even, I mean, you wouldn't even think it's possible, but it becomes even more unimportant. So we are really fighting to be heard and to continue to engage with actors, such as relevant actors in Sweden. And I think if people here are interested to have Humanium Metal launched, then we have the activist platform in Swedish, we have the petition in Swedish, and I think it would be really nice to see that this is actually a campaign that comes from the people in Sweden. So what we don't want to do as IAM is go into different contexts and say, well, we have a solution for you. We really want to see people engage on this idea, make it their own. And this is why, for example, we have launched the activist platform, so people can really kind of take the idea and run with it. And I'm quite happy to see that basically we get contacted by people from all over the world on a regular basis, you know, people from Sweden, people from Burundi, people from Mexico say, let's make this work. And as I said, I think in a few years, we will have established Humanium Metal in additional contexts, but it's also great to have support from activists, so get involved and help us make this happen, basically.
Yes, as you mentioned, we get a lot of interest around the world. I mean, I've been working with IAM for many years, and it's very seldom to see a project and initiative get so much attention as this is. We have support from Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama, and we have support from and attention in big media corporations all around the world. Why do you think this is? What is so special about Humanium Metal?
Well, I think it's a couple of things, actually. I think one, the circular business model is really attractive. You know, and I think it's so attractive because it's not only relevant to Humanium Metal. Basically, that you take a resource and then make it work to fund other things. It's just a really good way of making it work. And I want to say that, for example, Triva, one of the commercial partners we are working with that are producing these beautiful watches, they, for example, also get inspired by this and launched a new series in partnership with other organizations on time for oceans, sort of time for peace, inspired by, oh, we can actually make this work. And I think this is because this idea of circular business models is just something that is really relevant, especially in nowadays economy, especially with, you know, the complexity of challenges we see, and that is also embraced actually in Sustainable Development Goal 17, you know, where we see that different actors will have to work together. So I think that's definitely a part of it. And the other part is that it's very tangible. So I mentioned before that, you know, in general, disarmament, getting rid of weapons is not really something that's high on anybody's mind or priority list. And it kind of gets worse, you know, nuclear, people kind of can relate to this doomsday a bit more. But when it comes to guns, it just gets really tricky to engage people around it. But Humanium Metal makes it really tangible, you know. As you can see in this t-shirt, this was actually designed by a Swedish supporter we have who, you know, followed us on social media and really liked the Humanium Metal activist platform. And he just started to design this t-shirt for him and his friends and his family, and then send it to us. And now, you know, they're one around the world. So I think it's easy to kind of get involved, which especially helps with youth engagement. When it comes to like the tangibility. And that's true even in the context of working such as in El Salvador. So before the pandemic, for example, we organized our partner organized a conference together with us actually on gun violence in the region, the Northern Triangle. It was Guatemala and Honduras. And we had planned for 200 people, which is already quite a lot. And on the day, you know, of the conference, people were just flooding in. And they were coming, and it was more than 400 people, and half of them were, you know, people actually from affected communities, and half of them were youth. And I think what they shared was really strong. It really stayed with them. It was like, Humanium Metal kind of made it possible for us to talk about gun violence again, because before the discourse, you know, it was so lengthy and people didn't know what to do. So, but then Humanium Metal came. It's like, well, now we have a tool to discuss gun violence again.
We have a question here in the chat. I will read it to you. What about the legal guns that kill people then? You want to take away and make something new from illegal guns, which I think is great. But I bet that legal guns kills many too. I feel like it's hypocritical to, for example, allow police to have guns and practice this when we know that racism and corruption exist in law enforcement with the help of legal gun takes away innocent people's lives way too often.
Definitely, and I think it's a very good point. I think when it comes to the tangibility I just spoke about, then we have first to focus on what we can do. And you know, what we can do is ask governments to seize illegal guns and destroy illegal guns. There's existing international legislation on that. And then what we are also doing, when I spoke about the advocacy part, then what we're also doing is, of course, advocating for gun sense. And I think that what we just heard in terms of structural racism, for example, in law enforcement agencies, that's definitely something very important and something that needs to be highlighted. But that's not something we can address by having the guns destroyed. We first need to enter a dialogue, you know, on making this basically legal possible in countries where law enforcement is wearing weapons.
Thank you. That comment was from Ida. I don't think we have too much more time here. I can just add that as you say, it's tangible, and the products it makes it very easy to talk about these issues, even when, I mean, if I'm at a dinner party and just show my watch and say, this is made from an old Kalashnikov, people kind of react, and you get started in a discussion about talking about gun violence and talking about the damage it actually does. You have some more products in front of you, Jacqueline. Can't you just take the last minute here and show us what you have with you?
Yes,
made from destroyed guns.
Exactly. So I already showed you the watch, which is made by Trevor, and there are plenty of nice ones. And we also have a pen made from a good company. And I think that the pen is really strong in symbolism as well. So what we say is that we want this pen to sign a peace contract one day, which I think would be great, but we'll have to make it work. And we see about which kind of peace deal. But that, of course, would be great. I mean, we definitely have much more products that you can all check online. And of course, as I said, the products and the income generated goes back to affected communities. So that's really helpful. But also, you know, it's not only purchasing the products, you can also get engaged with us, for example, on the platform without having to spend any money.
Okay, we have to finish up here. We have the last question from Adina, where I can rewatch this seminar. We will upload this into our exhibition area in the what we call in Swedish the monter. So visit us there, or if you cannot find it there, if you get into some kind of technical problems, just reach out to us and we will be sure to send it to you somehow. That goes for the rest. But it should be available quite soon, and maybe even from dagarna themselves. That's all from us. Thank you very much, Jacqueline, and thank you all for listening in, and please visit us.
Thank you.
Bye.